Hey, this is gonna be a long video probably because I'm just gonna go through a bunch of notes I have, and there'll be a lot of pauses, I'm sure, and I don't really like editing videos anymore. I apologize for all of that. It's gonna be noisy here from time to time, but let's see. This video is a follow-up from the Nub Theory videos. I took the videos down, and for I was kind of ridiculed a little bit, but I don't want to talk about that. But later on, when the videos were down, I decided that I wanted to leave them down because I didn't agree with everything there. So I didn't want to put them back up until I had some kind of dialogue to go along with why I don't really agree with everything there. I mean, that was the first test, the initial. I didn't really get to, there was no experience at that time, right? So anyway, there's going to be some things in here that's definitely going to offend some people, but I don't mean to offend people. One thing I learned from a boss of mine was about how you should, he said, Lucas, no matter what, when you think you're right about something, speak up, stand up for yourself. So there's going to be some contentious things that I'm going to bring up during this. So what I'm going to talk about here is basically, what do I know about Clovis technology now? So what I decided to do was watch all of the Nub Theory videos again from the beginning to the end and make notes as I go. So things that I didn't disagree, or things that I disagreed with about my thoughts then versus now, and and anything else that came to mind. So the first thing is the debatable topic. It's about the ruts Clovis. There's a forum some way years back where I talked about it, and with all honesty in there as well, because there was apparently the owner, or hand me down from the owner or something, and then the potential buyer, which did end up buying it. But the Ruts Wenatchee cast, it just can't be accepted as authentically old. It's not even of the same technology of the stuff from the Wenatchee site, the East Wenatchee. It only looks similar to, I don't know, the untrained eye. I don't know any other nicer way to say it. even my perspective then versus now is different, and it's because my mindset is different than pretty much everyone else out there when I flint nap. But anyway, I'm going to talk more about it probably during this, but I'll say some stuff about it right now. I mean, just because it's the longest Clovis ever found in history doesn't mean it's fake or real. But I'm not really sure why it was made out of obsidian. I don't really know of any of that kind of anyway, that's not even the part I really want to talk about. It's more about the reduction technology. So when I look at it, I was wrong. I'm skipping a note here, but I used to say that the ruts, I thought, had 3 patinas on it. And, it was from carrying it around. The theory was from you flint nap on it, you carry it around, and then you flint nap on it some more. But during the carrying around process, it developed patina or rubbing or whatever. Well, I was wrong. It has 2. And the story, I'm not going to really talk about it in detail, but the story goes is as it was found, it was put in a sock and put in a tool box on a tractor or something like that, and rode around in there for years. And that's what developed the so-called rubbing or second patina on it. But so when you look at the reduction tech, what I see is, and this is I know for a fact because I've done the experiments myself, I've seen other people who use this type of technique and their results look identical to the flutes on the ruts and the one and only overshot on the ruts. And I don't have any of that stuff anymore, so I can't reference it. Can't look at it. I just got to go by memory. And they're pressure flaked with antler. It's antler like in a jig, like you see modern flint nappers using copper nail on an end, and they've got a Clovis or fixing a flute, and they set it on, in a jig, and they put that copper nipple or copper on the nipple and then push a lever, and the flute comes off, and he'll go all the way to the tip, right? Or really close and take the tip off and stuff. Well, that's how the ruts was fluted, and that's how the one single overshot was also taken. And then the rest of it, I remember the edges looking really, they just, when you use copper, the edges are thick. Almost no matter what you do. I mean, compared to antler, period. And so it doesn't look like any other of the Clovises from the East Wenatchee site whenever you really look at it like that. It almost looks like, like a lot of copper nappers, I had one myself. I took a copper pipe and flattened it on one end and used that as a scruncher to try to turn an edge or flip an edge so you could work the other side. And I don't know, it kind of looks like they did that, but it wasn't with copper. And it's just like to get, I don't know, the nubs, the nub theory that's out there is ridiculous. All right, this is I'm looking at my note here. Yeah, I don't have let's see, basically I'm just talking about why the nubs are there, and just forget about what you see on the ruts, just because it looks different and there's morphology, it just doesn't match the East Wenatchee stuff. Not to me, not at all. The nubs aren't put on there or on purpose. It is absolutely 100% just part of how the Clovis reduction process is. You for Clovis Tech, you use like isolated bevels at areas where there's thick mass, and you want to isolate the mass when you remove the part of the bevel and to make your platform. And then you take the flake, you have a really thick flake. And whenever you take a really thick flake, even when it's isolated, there's nubs left over, but especially when you use copper on a continuously ground platform and you just smack it, it really leaves a thick delta. So imagine, so you take a big flake and it leaves two ridges, right? You take a big flake across the biface and it leaves two ridges going across, right? Well, like this. One here, one there. All right. That ridge is there because it's thicker than the adjacent part of the stone. It's also even thicker up near the platform because you don't want the flake to break when you take the flake, so you don't want it too thin, and so it really leaves a thick edge. And if you once you take that flake and then you start like taking smaller flakes and isolating up over to the next ridge and then isolate over this way over to the next ridge, you're moving the thick area over to where there's a ridge, and then you're going to take a flake right there. In a nutshell, that's what nub theory is. It ain't, I mean, to call it even nub theory, I think is funny. So they're not used for anything. They just are a byproduct of the Clovis flint knapping reduction process, and it was way over exaggerated on the ruts Clovis, and people just ran with theories on it. So I talk about it a little bit in the video, and if I say something in there, I still believe it unless I say something differently here in this video about it. Got me some Mexican Fanta orange drink. Tastes like ice cream sickle pop. Conical cores. I said something about how every flake on a conical core has got to be an overshot, and I don't even know why I said that, because when you look on the core, they're not all overshots, and sometimes when they're making those triangular blades, they want them curved, and sometimes they want them straight. This is a little off topic, but it came to mind whenever I was watching the videos. It's on my YouTube channel. I made a video about Clovis spear that uses a bone point instead of a stone point. And I've talked with at least two people about throwing it at a deer, doing some testing with it, and I got to a point where I can't throw it, and that's why I asked them. I couldn't be able to throw it without hurting myself, and that's why I asked them. But I would just, it's open. I mean, talk to me about it. You can message me or comment or something, and I'd really like to help someone. I watched that again today, and out of all the videos I've watched of my own, that gave me goosebumps. And it's because I have a lot of passion about it. I really think it's like a 80 or 90% solution, okay? But the idea is there, and it needs some refining. But in a nutshell, that's it. And I'm going to talk about that some more too. Oh, Clovis tools, for sure. And I made this mistake in those nub theory videos. That's why I'm bringing it up. A, a, you, a Clovis person is not going to make a Clovis tool that has Cortex on it. If there's any Cortex on it, it's like very little, and it doesn't affect the integrity, the strength of the tool that they make, because the reason they don't want the Cortex is for that reason. There can be little micro cracks in there that you can't see until you flake it off, and you're using a stone tool like that, and it flakes and it breaks, and it could hurt you bad, right? And obviously you're gonna have to make another one. So for Clovis, no matter what, the crappy crap has got to come off. That's Cortex, cracks, any rough spot that is going to hinder further reduction of the core, like a chalky spot or a big hole or something. So the idea is to, like, I used a Texas piece, for example, that I'm thinking of in the video. You almost like, I don't want to say that, but you got to get the Cortex off first. So you take thin flakes, as thin as you can, to try to save the core, as much of it as possible, but it's Cortex free. Then you can start taking your tool flakes from that. Okay, I don't think flutes were used as tools. I would say most flutes break, but you can't go by that, because maybe if they're going to use it as a tool, they definitely don't want it to break. So we're breaking them, we're doing it wrong. But that's not my ideal why. I think that they were perfectionists, right? So these people, you've heard of the Clovis theory, right? Out of across the Bering Strait, the land bridge, whenever there was too much ice for people to migrate from Siberia to North America, and there were supposed ice corridors, or ice-free corridors, where the melt had started. So imagine this: if there's all ice, then there's no dirt, and if there's no dirt, there's no flint rock. So the flint rock to these people was precious. Okay, so agates are found in like volcanic outcroppings, and that could be just a volcanic plug that looks like a mountain, and there could be agate all along the base of that. So I don't know if that would be low country or high country or what in that area, but it's possible that there were outcroppings where there wasn't ice or snow, where there was precious flint. And But bone was abundant. I mean, there were mammoth everywhere, right, and other Pleistocene era creatures. So, uh, I'm going to talk about that later. I haven't even got to that part yet. Taking too much time. In the video, when I say continue fluting at the base, I'm wrong. Thinning to make a tool and maintain convexity and core can happen anywhere, and early. You're while you're thinning, you're making a tool, and it just could so happen to be from the base. Much of the stuff I made for the Nub Theory videos I thought looked ridiculous, or I think looks ridiculous to me now. Like, I purposefully put nubs on some, and I left a lot of cortex on tools. Okay, it's going to be hard to keep. This is a long note. So, kind of what I was hinting at a while ago, Clovis reduction technology is meant to make tools. Not a Clovis point, not a projectile point. Not originally, at least not Wenatchee, okay? Remember, Clovis spread fast, allegedly, and cultures change fast when you're in different regions, depending on the type of stone you have available and game and stuff like that. So plant napping methods will change depending on the culture. So a lot can happen in a short amount of time. That's what I'm trying to say. So for Wenatchee purposes, for sure, during the time that we think they could have been migrating through the Ice Age passage, ice-free passage, it's not, Clovis reduction is meant to make tools. There's not any stone, there's ice everywhere, but bone is highly available, so the stone is very precious. So you very careful, meticulous, right? You don't want to break a flake because you need to use that. So you take these tiny flakes. I call Clovis theory, like, in one way, it's you take a whole bunch of big flakes to take a really big flake, okay? We're not taking little flakes here, not even for isolation. So, I mean, you do take little flakes, but it's, when you're prepping a platform. And, right kind of blending and stuff. But regardless of that, I'm off topic a little. So you make a tool like, well, this one. This is a piece of super high grade Burlington, and it's got a lot of cortex on it. River cobble. I took this flake off. It's more of a Dalton flake, and Dalton strategy, but the idea here is if you remove all of this bottom part along there, then that ridge is like in the middle, and you can use this whole narrow piece now as a tool that will scrape bone. You can make other tools out of flint that will cut bone, cut ivory. Um, Clovis point is the result of making tools, making Clovis tools. It's not the goal. Um, yeah. So the stone is sacred to you, right? So imagine you find a piece of high grade agate and you don't know where the next place is. And I mean, I don't know if you're trapped into forcing yourself to go south, but anyway, you're moving south because you want to go south for some reason. So you're on the move, new land, new territory. Never been there before. And there's ice everywhere, so flint is going to be really, really hard to find. So you take a bunch of flakes from a core and you end up with like the smallest, let's say. It doesn't matter which Clovis point on the one that Valerie Waldorf drew, all those pencil drawings, ink drawings of all those East Wenatchee Clovises. The smallest one, the largest ones, doesn't matter. To me, the flute, at that time, it signified the end. Like, we took all the thick flakes that we could keep together and make useful tools out of for scraping bones. That's why they got to be thick. And ivory and stuff like that, right? So, like I said, the flute, to me, it's just my opinion, signifies the end. That's the end of that core. Thank you so much, Mother Nature, for providing me with this high quality flint. But now it's done. I can't really use it anymore. I use bone as a projectile point already. There's lots of evidence of that in the archaeological record for back then. Of course, they probably also used stone, but there's a lot of evidence of bone. And I understand why, because of the ice, right? And so it would get buried. You know, cache. I don't really know if I understand if caches were ever meant to be returned to or not. I kind of live on both sides of the fence with that. But I kind of lean towards that's it. You know, you find used up flakers and stuff too, and I just think it's like, thank you to Mother Nature. Maybe we just had a fresh kill. Maybe we just had found a new outcropping of high quality flint or something like that. I also think that I can imagine the people in East Wenatchee going up. I think is it the Columbia River? It goes all the way over and meets with the Missouri, basically, or it's close. And anyway, you go down the Missouri River because that's where the pass is at, and that's where it makes sense. And you follow rivers because it's the easiest route, especially the big rivers when you're in new territory. And you end up in North Dakota. And the ice there, at least, has melted. And there's Knife River laying almost on top of the ground everywhere, and not just on top of the ground, but just underneath the ground, because it was in an escarpment, and the glacial ice sheet pushed it off, and it stayed submerged in ice. It was hidden. It was never even, except for small pieces, it was in earth, basically. And the ice moved it out and dispersed it in North Dakota. So you find an easy route, there's no ice, you transition into, like I was talking about earlier, you have a new kind of culture now. You have different kind of stone, forces you to use new flint knapping habits, because Knife River flint, even though it's high quality, is way different than big, blocky, Northwest agate type flints. And you've got a different game now, because I guess the larger mammoths and stuff are dying off. I just think of the buffalo there. Antiquus, I guess, was probably one of the critters they went after, I guess. So I don't really know. But anyway, I believe that was a transitional period from paleo to archaic for that group of people. Like, for example, the East Wenatchee people, or that they had to knock all the cortex off, and there's not a lot of mass left to take a bunch of thin flakes. So an Eden, coincidentally, and you have to go back and watch this Clovis spear video that I'm talking about, but the Edens coincidentally fit directly, perfectly into like a hafting system similar to what I made in that Clovis video. All you have to do is, get the two ivory bone rods. You take a tool that you can make from a flake and make it into a V, scrape it out, both sides. Now you've got this diamond shape that an Eden will slide right into. And then later on, you didn't need maybe a multi-composite tool like I'm thinking of, wasn't as necessary, so they could do more with less, and the atlatl was born. Okay, so I talked about it a little bit, but I'm going to say real quick. You transition from hammerstones to ivory, you're going to get thinner flakes. So the thinner flakes have to be used for something different, because it can't be used for the same thing you want thicker flakes for. So there were either no tools or different, thinner types of tools that came from antler, ivory, buffalo horn. Refinement wasn't always necessary. I don't think refinement was necessary until transitional period anyway, because they weren't, at least early I'm talking about. It changed soon after, I believe, but at least early I don't think they used them as projectile points at all. I won't talk about that right now. Let's save that for later. If you want tools to last longer, they probably should be thicker. You're scraping bone, thin tools probably aren't going to cut it. You're probably using thicker tools. So antler and ivory is not going to be your main percussor. Hammerstone is going to be your main percussor. And you don't really, Clovis, really, you don't need much. I used to use this. You guys probably familiar with that a little bit, but I use that a lot. Used to. I don't flint knap anymore, but I'm fixing to give a flint knapping lesson to someone, and that's brushing up a little bit, but I don't think you need a separate scruncher. I started using this hammerstone before I stopped flint knapping as a scruncher and a percussor, and I think I have a video on hammerstone basics where there's a couple hammerstones in there, but this is starting to develop the wear pattern, just like on at least one of those hammerstones. So I don't hold it in my hand, even though you can, but I try not to ever. It's dangerous to push flakes off into your fingers, so even though I did it all the time. But you can still move your fingers out of the way and do it, and sometimes I do need to, but I find a lot of it where I just kind of put the point on the pad and just put this on the pad and kind of use it like modern day hopper scrunchers when I'm isolating a platform or fixing a grind on a platform. So Really, to me, I think all a Clovis napper needs to make tools is 1 or 2 hammerstones and a piece of ivory for pressure and a piece of leather for pressure work. Something to put the ivory in, the pressure flaker. You don't need anything else. The tool is not the point. The flake is the tool. That's what nub theory is all about. That's what it's supposed to be all about. I didn't make the message very clear then, but I'm trying to make it clear now. The Clovis point is not the tool. The tool is the flake you take off of the Clovis core. Turn that flake into a tool. Just like this one. It's not Clovis flake, it's Dalton. But that's got a perfect ridge. It's got the right kind of thickness where you need it, and you just remove all the stuff you don't need, and you can make a scraper. Oh, so what was the projectile point? The projectile point was bone, or ivory. They found many of them. I talk about a few that are documented in my Clovis spear videos. Ivory was common. They did use bone, dense bone like mammoth bone. Oh, so I have a note here that says see Clovis spear videos. I'm really pushing that. I can't even flint knap anymore. I can't throw a spear and be accurate and have enough thrust to be able to penetrate adequately to satisfy the audience. But I still believe with really everything I have in me that, like I say, that's about an 80 or 90% solution. I just need some gung-ho person that's motivated about stuff like that to go follow those videos and try to make one and do your own tests and see if it works. You got to use bone, and you got to use those bi-bevel bone rods together, and you need to stick that in. I don't know if you stick it in the spear itself and risk the spear breaking and having to replace that, or do you make a socket like I did and then attach that to a spear? I don't know, but please contact me. I want somebody to make it. All right, here's where I'm going to tick some people off. Every great once in a while I want to go watch a flint knapping video, apparently, so I'll type in Hammerstone flint knapping every single time and look to see if there's anybody out there really digging in and trying or experimenting or whatever. And anyway, I ran across this video, and I'm gonna point him out. It's Donnie Dust's Paleo Tracks. I made a comment on there, so it's detailed enough, but he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing now because I don't remember, but that you can't use sandstone for hammerstone, or that you shouldn't use sandstone for hammerstone, or something like that. And like I said in the beginning of the video, this is something I know. So you can't use granite and control a flake. If you want to use granite to spall, I mean, go right ahead. This was pointed at one time, kind of like this, not not a lot, but it's heavy. This is a massive hammerstone. I use this to collect flint everywhere I've ever gone to collect flint, for cleaning it out of the, cleaning it off, seeing if it's good or whatnot. It's sandstone. It doesn't bust apart. It's hard enough that it doesn't crack open. If you're using sandstone and it's falling apart, then it's just because you're using the wrong sandstone. And I get it. Maybe it's not in your backyard, but it's out there. Same as, the old guys would have done it. They found the good stuff, carried it with them forever. This used to be my favorite. I was offered $50 for this by a person. I couldn't believe it. It's a way smaller than it used to be. It's more of a finishing stone now, but I used to use it predominantly once I got past this. Flint knapping is one of those things where, how's that saying go? I don't remember it all of a sudden. You can walk the talk the walk, whatever, but but BS, whatever, however it goes. Anyhow, flint knapping is proof in the pudding. If someone says you can't use sandstone as a hammerstone, they don't know what they're talking about. I don't care who they are. I don't care who they are. Because you're not going to use granite as a hammerstone and control flakes all the way down to a finished stage. Forget it. So this is the hardest sandstone hammerstone I've ever come across. It's too hard to use, and it's sandstone. So, granite is way too hard no matter what. Watch my videos. I'm not striking on a plane. It's the same as a copper napper creating their isolated copper nipple platform, but you can take a hammerstone and strike it with that. It's not too rounded. So I ain't trying to tick anyone off about that, but I'm tired of people saying that granite is what you're supposed to use for a hammerstone. I don't care who you are. So it really frustrated me because I put so much work and so much time into it and experimenting with different hammerstones, and these guys who have over 1 million subscribers are being followed by people, and they're believing them, saying that you can't use that you can't use sandstone as a hammerstone, but they haven't finished anything with a hammerstone. They get, just like everybody else, they get to a point and they give up. I can't go any further. I'm gonna have to pick up my copper or my antler billet or something else that I'm used to that's not in the archaeological record. That's really it. My last note was to end by talking about how Wenatchee people could have transitioned into North Dakota archaic people. And I really already talked about that. So, this is Hammerstone Nub Theory number 5.